Hello, students. This is the video lecture about the current state of the newspaper industry, or at least the more current, modern state of the newspaper industry. The video lecture that you just watched, or at least you should have watched that other one first, is about newspaper history and the history of this particular form of media. This is the current stuff. Here we go. Before I get into stuff, I just want to clarify a particular part, a particular terminology, editorial. Sometimes when we, meaning me in academics or me in the profession, use the term editorial, we refer to anything that's non-advertising. So editorial content can be used to mean anything that's non-advertising, any of the original content in a newspaper. But technically, strictly speaking, in the narrow, proper definition of that word, an editorial is the opinion part of the newspaper. These still appear in newspapers. There are still printed newspapers. Um, and the printed newspaper, in the end of the first section is where all the hard news is located, not the entertainment, not the sports, not the comics. But at the end of the hard news section, they have a page or maybe two pages where columnists and different people give their opinion about the state of affairs. And they also publish letters to the editor where people talk about certain things and its opinion. So when we say editorial, you need to pay attention. When someone is using the term editorial, do they mean anything that's non-advertising, or do they mean the opinion section of the newspaper? Okay. Here is the San Diego Union Tribune, local newspaper from Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022. Here we have some editorials about what is it about? Oh, starting school, whether it's okay to start school before 8 a.m. or before 8:30 a.m. And I just noticed this. Laura Castaneda used to teach for us, and Bella Ross right here. Bella Ross was a JMS student. She was the editor of the Daily Aztec very, very recently. So good, very cool to see Bella's name listed right there. Okay, now I want to talk about classified ads. The newspaper industry, or at least the printed part of the newspaper industry, the print product, is really suffering, is in a serious state of decline. I think y'all know this already. And one of the reasons for that was the decline in classified ads. Back when in the day when I was an undergraduate, and certainly when I was in high school, if you wanted to look for a job, buy a car, anything, you would look in the newspaper. This was pre-internet. I'm from the pre-internet era, and that's where you would find, or if you were looking for a roommate or looking for a pet, anything like that. And newspapers made a pretty significant amount of money by printing this stuff, and it was very, very cheap for the newspaper to do this. They didn't really have to spend graphics editors or spend a lot of time as writers. People would come in and you pay by the line. I have a car that I want to sell, and I would pay $10 or $20, whatever it was, and the newspaper would give you a set number of lines, a set number of words. And because there was no internet, this was the only way to find out about products and to find out things. And so it was just a great source of revenue for newspapers. Again, they didn't have to spend a lot of labor to do this. People come in, write down what they say, print it, boom, good to go. Craigslist took away a lot of this business, and now you have eBay and other websites as well where people can buy and sell and trade things. But it was really Craigslist that sort of removed this source of revenue from the newspaper industry. That was a massive, massive blow to the newspaper industry, something they're still not fully recovered from yet. Now, this chart right here shows two things. We have advertising and advertising revenue going back to pre-1960 up until the year 2020. And advertising revenue was very, very big in the early 21st century. Oh my God, look at that. $49 billion, $49.4 billion industry. And it has gone down significantly because people are reading fewer newspapers. Now, circulation has gone up. That yellow line indicates circulation. They actually do count the number of newspapers that are in circulation. And from the number of newspapers, they can do an estimate as to how many people are reading. Circulation has gone up slowly, and people are paying more for physical newspapers. I buy physical newspapers. I actually get three of them on Sunday. So people are paying more, and we have circulation going up, but that doesn't make up for all the money that has been lost to advertising. It does not make up for all the money that's been lost to advertising. But I do think newspapers perform a vital function and are a necessary part of society. because so much of the news that's on radio, TV, and even on social media, so much of the news actually comes from newspapers. Newspapers are like the farm. They produce the stuff and then other people distribute it. And you may say, well, we don't need newspapers anymore. I just need Snapchat or Instagram. Well, that's like saying I don't need a farm. I just need to go to Vaughn's or Ralph's. Well, Vaughn's or Ralph's have to get their food from somewhere, right? So you cannot just rely on social media to get your news. The news original news reporting has to come from somewhere, and that somewhere is the newspapers. So we do need newspapers. We need people to perform this function in society. And it is troubling that the industry is in such disarray. But just being honest. And the decline, the newspaper industry was already in decline. The pandemic has only hastened that. Here, this figure shows circulation, and you can see how circulation has changed dramatically from the beginning of 2019 up to the beginning of 2021. This coincides with the serious period of COVID and this period of lockdown. That's a pretty dramatic decline, right? Pretty dramatic decline, just a 2-year period, affecting New York Times, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, and other papers as well. So the pandemic accelerated a trend that was already in place. All right, now I want to talk about newspaper, how they determine the size of the audience, because I think this is a fascinating topic and it applies to other forms of media. And it's useful to know, okay? Uh, there are these things that come in newspapers called inserts. Sunday papers are notorious for them. If you're ever at your parents' or grandparents' house and you see the Sunday newspaper, it's very, very thick. And it comes with all these coupons and ads. Advertisers know that many people are home on Sunday. Sunday is a great time to reach people. They have time to actually flip through the newspaper. And if you want to send them ads, you put them in the Sunday newspaper. And newspapers get paid money to distribute that. Okay. I get the Union Tribune, and I also get the LA Times, and I get the New York Times on Sunday. But the local paper, San Diego Union Tribune, comes with a whole bunch of ads on Sunday. So the Union Tribune is actually getting paid by Walmart and Costco and whoever else to actually put their ads in there. So that is a source of revenue. That is still a source of revenue for newspapers. But there is a company that wants to verify that the numbers are correct. It would be very easy. I'm not advocating this. But it would be very, very easy for newspapers to lie about their circulation. Say a newspaper distributes 500,000 copies on a Sunday. Let's just make that up, 500,000 copies on a Sunday. So they charge Walmart, the local Walmart, to distribute coupons to 500,000 people. Well, what's to prevent that newspaper from lying and say, oh, we distribute 1 million, we distribute 2 million, we distribute 2 million newspapers every Sunday, pay us for 2 million. That would be misleading and that would be deceptive. So to prevent that from happening, there is a company called the Alliance for Audited Media. Okay, that is what it's called, the Alliance for Audited Media. They do something called a circulation audit. Publishers, newspapers, and magazine publishers say, hey, we publish this many copies per week or per day, whatever it is. And the Alliance comes in and verifies that's in fact true. This organization is funded by many publishers and many ad agencies. Basically, they provide a metric that everyone can agree is correct. We all need something that we can agree upon. Otherwise, if everyone has their own standard and metric, it's hard to negotiate a price. For example, if you're an advertiser, this is the number that we all agree is the correct number. Then there is something called the insert verification. I find this to be a fascinating thing. Fascinating. If the Union Tribune says, we last week we distributed ads for 20 companies, 30 companies, whatever, inserts, some poor person, it's probably an entry-level job. I'm guessing it's an entry-level job, has to take that paper, the local Union Tribune. And if there's supposed to be 20 ads in there, then they go through and check, were there 20 coupons and flyers inserted? It's to prevent people from lying. It's to prevent people from being deceptive. There have been instances, believe it or not, where a publisher will say, hey, pay us for 500,000 inserts. We're going to distribute 500,000 inserts on behalf of Legoland, right? So Legoland can drum up business. And then the company just takes those inserts and just throws them in the garbage, throws them in the river, whatever. They don't have to spend the labor and effort and cost to deliver that stuff. They just throw it in the garbage. And then poor Legoland is, paid for something that they did not get. So insert verification is to keep publishers honest. That is the point of insert verification, to keep publishers honest. The other thing that advertisers and retailers like about newspaper inserts, I forgot to mention this earlier, is that you can zone them. The term zone, Z-O-N-E. You can zone them by zip code, right? The people who live in Santee have different buying habits than the people who live in La Jolla. Apologies to everyone who is in Santee. I am apologizing to Santee, but let's face it, people in La Jolla, if you have a zip code in La Jolla, you probably have more money. Or what's that, Rancho Santa Fe? That's a pricey area up there, right? Or any of those north counties, some of those are pretty pricey as well. Whereas, Santee, or maybe, what's another area out there? Maybe Lemon Grove, whatever. Maybe it doesn't have the same, or Chula Vista, it doesn't have the same buying power. Just saying, it's true. Or the type of products you might want to advertise in Chula Vista, maybe not the kind of products you want to advertise in Poway, right? And vice versa. So that's something that you can do with a newspaper. You know where people live, geographically where they live, so you can target and zone particular ads. This is a famous circulation scandal. I love this story. I love the weird stories and stories of clever criminals. Not that I advocate criminal activity. I'm not advocating criminal activity. But in 2004, Newsday, that is a tabloid newspaper in the New York City area, was inflating its circulation so badly that criminal charges were actually filed. However many newspapers they were putting in circulation, they were doubling or tripling it, and coming up with clever ways so that when people came to verify the numbers, they would sort of game the system. If they know an auditor is going to come on Monday of next week, they maybe would print more copies of the newspaper on that Monday, even have trucks delivering them. The trucks were going nowhere, so that a person with a clipboard is counting, this many trucks came out of the warehouse. Each truck carries so many copies of the newspaper. Well, some of those trucks were going nowhere, just throwing them away, coming back into a back entrance, driving out again, just to fool the person that's auditing. And again, that's pretty egregious and definitely a wrong thing to do. That's used as a cautionary tale. Do not lie about your circulation. Now, here is a copy of the reports that are published by these auditing companies. It used to be called the Audit Bureau of Circulation. Now it's called the Alliance for Audited Media. And here we have, for the San Diego Union Tribune and its related products, they have the combined audience broken down. They actually have it broken down by days of the week. Sunday is clearly the biggest day. If you could only advertise in a newspaper on one day of the week, Sunday would be the day. But I think it's interesting that they have the days of the week broken out. And what I find fascinating about this is, look at the bottom right. Hopefully you can see that on whatever screen you are using to watch this video. They actually calculate readers per copy. 2.1 for Monday through Friday, and then 2.3 for Sunday. How could there be 0.3 of a person? Statistics. But if you have 1 million copies of a newspaper in circulation and 2.3 people read each copy, then you could, say, whatever that 2,300,000 people, whatever it would be, whatever it would be, that would be the approximate number of people who read your newspaper. So I think it's pretty interesting that they calculate readers per copy. Nielsen does something similar with television. I think it's 2.5 people per television. So if they know that 100 TV homes watch the show, that's going to guess to be 250 people. Some homes have more, some homes have fewer, some homes have only one person. But with TV, it's 2.5 people watching each TV. And for newspapers, it's 2.1 during the week and 2.3 people on Sunday. Now, I'm going to talk about paywall. That is a new trend, or relatively new trend. I think you all are familiar with this. To lock up rather than put content online for free. People need to get paid. And I do believe journalists and musicians and artists, everyone needs to get paid for what they do. Everyone needs to get paid for what they do. But we use the term paywall to describe that way of locking up your content. There's different types of paywalls. Yes, this is the kind of thing that might appear on a quiz. Content that's free has no paywall at all. That's becoming relatively rare. That's becoming an unsustainable model. A hard wall is pretty uncommon. That means you can't access anything All the digital content is locked up. You have to pay to access anything. Freemium means you get some content for free, and then you might get additional articles if you pay an additional fee. A freemium model is used with many, many online forms of distribution. Some of these online streaming services. Oh, you can get a couple of episodes of The Office for free. If you want to get episodes, or season 6, 7, 8, you got to pay. So that's what we call that model, where there's some stuff free and some stuff premium. And then finally, we have the metered paywall. This is probably the most common in the newspaper industry. You get a certain number of articles for free, and then maybe it's 20 a month, maybe it's 5 a month. Once you hit that certain number, you have to start paying. And I know you can clear your cache. I know you people are pretty smart. You can probably figure out, how to manipulate your browser, or if you can use a phone and then you use a laptop, then you use an iPad. There's ways around the system. It's not a perfect system, but at least it is an attempt to get people to pay. Factors contributing to the decline in newspapers. There is a decreasing interest in news, which I think is kind of sad. Both in newspapers and other forms of media, people are less interested in actual news, more interested in perhaps celebrity gossip, as it were. There's also challenges from other forms of media. Television is much more widely consumed than newspapers, and social media is consumed even more widely as well. And despite the fact, as I mentioned earlier, that television and social media get their news from newspapers, these other forms of media are taking attention away and taking some of the oxygen out of the room. There's also been a trend to make the newspapers look more visually engaging. USA Today is the most famous example of that. If you're not familiar with USA Today, it was considered to be kind of a dumbed down, cartoonish version of a newspaper. But it, is pretty popular, I have to say. There's also competition between other forms of media. Television pulled a lot of the ad revenue away from newspapers, and today we have Google and Facebook dominating the online advertising business. Those two companies function almost like the virtual monopoly, dominating the online advertising business. And there have been many lawsuits from newspapers saying it's not fair. We cannot survive in the face of this sort of like unfair business competition. Even if we put our product online and want to sell ads, Google and Facebook are taking all the ads away. And the unfortunate thing is that a lot of the stuff that's circulated on Facebook is news articles that come from newspapers. So the newspapers are producing this stuff, but having their advertising revenue taken away by their platforms. And then finally, there is this emphasis on profits over journalism, getting money as opposed to actually providing viable news to people. This was discussed in that Patriot Act video that I had y'all watch. And I understand the need to make money. I like money. Wish I had more of it. But I also believe in doing some social good and some positive things for society. That money is not the end all and be all, and that we should be trying to make the world a better place. Isn't that what we all want? Ultimately, we all want to make the world a better place. And if companies are focused solely on profits, they may not be making the world a better place. There is hope for the future. I don't want to end on a negative note. Newspapers are being forced to innovate all sorts of new things, faced with all these challenges. For example, there's the rise of newspaper podcasts. A lot of newspapers have podcasts. The Daily is one that I listen to sometimes from the New York Times. Pretty informative. Sometimes it's really, really informative. There's also a move to make newspapers and media outlets nonprofit entities. If the drive for profits is so detrimental to journalism, maybe profits should be removed entirely, and they should be nonprofit entities or partially funded by the government. And whenever we talk about government funded media in the United States, people get very concerned because they say that's communism. That's not what we do. And it does make me a little concerned as well. However, there's always a however. The BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation, literally had a monopoly on broadcasting television and radio news in England for many, many years. They don't have a monopoly anymore, but for many years they did have a monopoly. And even though they weren't really funded by the British government, they functioned as a monopoly. They were the only people allowed to do that. And the BBC did not accept advertising at all. So the BBC had the luxury of, let's produce news for the people that's just important, intelligent, informed, and correct. And we're not going to try and chase advertising dollars and being as lurid and sensational or as bizarre as possible to attract the audience because it didn't matter. The BBC did not accept ads. They got money if you bought a radio or television set in England, you had to pay a fee. That fee was put into one pool and given to the BBC. So they were getting money, but they didn't have to chase advertising. And I think that was a very, very, very smart operating structure. And the BBC to this day is still considered to be one of the best and most reputable and trusted media outlets. So having the government partially fund some form of news is not a bizarre situation in my idea. I'm not saying it's the best, but I'm saying it's not bizarre. And I can see the logic behind it. And digital profits are increasing. So I think there is some hope for the future. I think there is some hope for the future. And we have something, as of this recording, I'm recording this in August of 2022, something called the Local Journalism Sustainability Act, where people in Congress are saying that the government should give tax credits to news organizations to help them survive. I believe also this Local Journalism Sustainability Act also includes legal actions against people like Google and Facebook to prevent them from harvesting all the content from newspapers and selling it at a profit, cutting out the newspapers. So I believe that's part of it as well. I'll keep an eye on this on behalf of the class, what is going on with the Local Journalism Sustainability Act. But I believe that news provides such a vital function to a functioning democracy that I do believe it is in the government's interest to make sure that good, reliable, objective news outlets survive. Otherwise, we're just going to be left with a bunch of people on TikTok teaching us dance moves and things like that, which is entertaining. But I need news along with the latest Megan Thee Stallion dance moves. That's it. The end. Thank you for listening. Hope you learned something.